What if the world around you went dark, the screens you trust flickered out, and the tiny magnetic needle you carry shattered into pieces? Imagine the cold rush of panic as the familiar hum of satellite signals disappears, and you are left with only the ancient whispers of the sky, the wind, and the earth beneath your feet. That moment of sheer vulnerability can become the most powerful lesson of all, learning how to read the world the way our ancestors did, without a single piece of modern technology. If you've ever felt that knot of fear when you're lost, drop a thumbs up in the comments. It tells me you're ready to reclaim that ancient confidence. I'm standing here at the edge of a forest clearing, the light fading as the day turns into evening, and I want to share a story that changed the way I see the wilderness forever. A few years back, I set out on a solo trek through a remote canyon, confident in my GPS and my trusty compass. Halfway through, a sudden storm rolled in, the clouds swallowing the sun, and the device I relied on sputtered and died. My compass, battered by a drop from a rocky ledge, snapped in half. I was alone, the path obscured, and night was closing in fast. In that moment, I remembered an old trick my grandfather taught me, using the sun's shadow to find direction. I drove a sturdy stick into the soft soil, watched its shadow crawl across the ground, marked its tip every 15 minutes, and drew a line that pointed east-west. By the time the storm cleared, I had a rough bearing that guided me back to the trailhead. That experience taught me that technology may fail, but the natural world never does. Why does this matter today? In a world where we depend on glowing screens and satellite constellations, it's easy to forget that our ancestors navigated vast continents without any of that. Batteries run out, signals drop in deep valleys, and a sudden storm can render even the most advanced equipment useless. Knowing how to orient yourself using the sun, the stars, the terrain, and the subtle clues around you not only keeps you safe, but also deepens your connection to the environment. It sharpens your senses, builds confidence, and turns a potential crisis into an adventure of discovery. In the next few minutes, I'll walk you through 4 natural compass systems that have guided humans for tens of thousands of years. We'll start with the sky, learning how the sun's daily arc and the Nix constellations can become reliable guides. Then we'll move to the ground, decoding the messages hidden in the landscape and the plants that grow there. After that, we'll explore how water, wind, and animal behavior can point the way, and finally I'll show you low-tech field techniques you can practice right now, like the shadow stick method and the north by the sun trick. By the end of this journey, you'll have a cheat sheet you can print, and you'll be ready to test these skills in a real-world scenario later in the video. Let's start with the oldest guide we have, the sky. The sun rises in the east and sets in the west, but the exact path it follows changes with the seasons and your latitude. At solar noon, when the sun reaches its highest point in the sky, it lies due south if you're in the northern half of the world, and due north if you're in the southern half. By observing the sun's movement throughout the day, you can estimate the cardinal directions. One of the simplest ways to do this is to plant a straight stick upright in the ground and watch its shadow. In the early morning, the shadow points roughly west, and as the day progresses it swings around, pointing east at sunset. If you mark the tip of the shadow at regular intervals, say every 15 minutes, and connect the first and last marks, you create a line that runs east-west. The perpendicular line through the stick space then points north-south. This is the classic shadow stick method, and it works anywhere you have an unobstructed view of the sun. Now, there is a shortcut that even the ancient nomads used when they didn't have a clock. When the shadow of the stick is exactly half the length of the stick itself, the line from the base to the tip of the shadow points roughly east-west. This self-shadow trick gives you a quick approximation without needing to track the shadow over time. It's not perfectly precise, but in a pinch it can give you a reliable bearing. When the sun disappears behind clouds or the night falls, the stars become your compass. In the northern half of the world, the North Star, also known as Polaris, sits almost directly above the Earth's rotational axis. To locate it, find the Big Dipper, a familiar pattern of 7 bright stars. The 2 stars at the end of the bowl form a line that points straight toward Polaris. Once you've identified Polaris, you know you're facing north. In the southern half, the Southern Cross points toward the south celestial pole. Extend the long axis of the cross about 4.5 times its length, and you'll land near the south pole of the sky. Keep in mind that the position of the stars shifts slightly with the seasons, so the exact angle changes throughout the year, but the general method remains the same. Seasonal adjustments also affect the sun's path. In summer, the sun climbs higher in the sky and takes a longer, more southerly arc in the northern hemisphere, while in winter it stays lower and its arc shifts toward the south. By noting the height of the sun at noon, you can infer the time of year, which helps refine your directional estimates. For example, if the sun is high and you're in the northern half, you're likely in the summer months, and the sun will be more directly overhead at noon, giving you a shorter shadow and a more precise north-south line. These celestial cues have guided explorers across deserts, oceans, and mountain ranges for millennia. They are simple, reliable, and require nothing more than an open sky and a keen eye. But the sky isn't the only teacher. The land itself offers a wealth of directional information if you know how to read it. Plants, rocks, and even the shape of the terrain can reveal the prevailing winds and the direction of the sun. In the northern half, moss often grows on the north side of trees where the shade is greatest, while the south side gets more sunlight and stays drier. However, this isn't a hard rule, as local humidity and forest density can affect moss growth, so it's best used as a supplemental clue rather than a primary compass. In the southern half, the pattern reverses, with moss favoring the south side of trunks. Snow melt patterns on a slope can also indicate which side receives more sun exposure. The side that thaws earlier is typically the one facing the sun. The shape of the vegetation canopy can tell you about prevailing winds. In open plains, you often see trees lean slightly opposite the dominant wind direction, their branches growing thicker on the side that faces the wind. In coastal regions, the windward side of a hill may be stunted, while the leeward side supports taller, fuller growth. By observing these subtle differences, you can infer the direction from which the wind usually blows, which in turn points you toward the sun's path. Rocks and soil also carry clues. In desert environments, dunes form with a gentle slope on the windward side and a steeper slip face on the leeward side. The slip face always points downwind, so if you stand at the base of a dune and look up the gentle slope, you're facing into the wind. In forested valleys, the direction of a river's flow can help you orient yourself. Rivers in the northern half often flow from higher elevations in the south toward lower ground in the north, though local topography can create exceptions. If you can locate the source of a stream, often a spring or a higher elevation, you can use its downstream direction as a guide. All of these natural indicators work best when you combine them. A single clue might be misleading, but when you cross-reference the sun's shadow, the moss on a tree, and the tilt of a dune, a clear picture emerges. This layered approach mirrors how ancient hunter-gatherers navigated vast territories. They never relied on a single sign, but built a mental map from multiple, reinforcing observations. Now, I want to hear from you. Have you ever used any of these natural signs to find your way? Share your experience in the comments, and if this is resonating with you, give it a like. It helps the channel keep bringing you more of this kind of content. In the next segment, we dive deeper into the living clues of the environment, how water patterns, wind direction, and animal behavior can become reliable guides when the sky is hidden or the terrain is confusing. We'll explore how the sound of a river can lead you downstream, how the movement of clouds can hint at the prevailing wind, and how the tracks of wildlife often point toward water sources. By the end of that section, you'll have a toolbox of techniques that work together, ensuring you can stay oriented no matter what the elements throw at you. If you're finding this valuable, consider subscribing so you don't miss the upcoming demonstrations where I put all these skills to the test in a real wilderness setting. Stay tuned, because the next part will bring everything together in a hands-on adventure that shows exactly how to navigate a full route without a compass or a GPS. When the sky hides behind a thick canopy or a sudden storm, the world offers other whispers that can point you in the right direction. Let's start with water, the most reliable thread that runs through every landscape. Even in a desert, a dry riverbed tells a story. The direction of a channel, the slope of the sand, and the way the vegetation clings to the banks all give clues about the flow. If you find yourself standing beside a creek, remember that water always seeks the lowest point, so following it downstream will eventually bring you to larger rivers, valleys, or even human settlements that often cluster near water sources. In many ancient migration routes, travelers used the gentle gradient of a stream as a natural highway, moving with the current rather than against it. But water is not just about following a flow, it also tells you where you are. In the northern half of the globe, many rivers start in higher mountains to the south and travel northward toward the plains. If you can locate the source of a spring, usually higher up on a hill or hidden among rocks, you have a reliable northward reference. Conversely, in the southern half, rivers often flow from the higher southern elevations toward the north. Of course, local topography can create exceptions, so always cross-check with other signs. Look at the shape of the reverse bends. Sharp turns often indicate a change in underlying geology, while gentle meanders suggest a stable, flat valley. Another water-based hint is the presence of moss. While the old myth that moss always grows on the north side of a tree is an oversimplification, there is truth in the observation that moss prefers moist, shaded environments. In the northern hemisphere, north-facing slopes receive less direct sunlight, staying cooler and damper, which encourages moss growth. However, wind disposite phases, humidity, and the type of tree all influence moss patterns. So, treat moss as a clue, not a rule. If you notice a consistent band of green on one side of several trees, that side is likely the cooler, more shaded direction, which can help you orient yourself when other references are missing. Now let's talk about wind, a subtle but powerful guide. The wind's direction is often shaped by the surrounding terrain, such as valleys funneling breezes or hills casting a leeward shadow. Early hunters learned to read the movement of light grasses, the ripple of tall reeds, and even the direction of smoke from a fire to gauge wind. When you stand in an open plain and feel the wind on your face, you instantly know which way it's coming from. In many coastal regions, prevailing winds follow predictable patterns. For example, in the northern hemisphere, winds often blow from the west in mid-latitude zones. If you can identify the prevailing wind direction for the region you're in, you can use it as a compass needle. Even in forested areas, listening to the rustle of leaves or the sway of branches can reveal wind direction. Animal behavior offers a living compass as well. Many creatures are drawn to water, and their tracks often lead toward a source. Small mammals, such as rabbits or foxes, leave trails that converge at watering holes or riverbanks. Birds, especially migratory species, follow the same routes year after year, and their flight paths can indicate the direction of a major waterway or valley. If you hear the call of a waterfall, they are likely nearby a lake or pond. In the evenings, the chorus of insects increases near moist environments, providing another auditory beacon. Even insects like dragonflies are excellent indicators because they breed in standing water. Spotting a swarm of them suggests a pond or a slow-moving stream within a short distance. One of the most reliable animal signs is the behavior of deer. In winter, deer tend to move toward lower elevations where food is more accessible, often following established paths that lead to valleys and river corridors. Observing fresh deer tracks can point you toward a safe passage through dense forest. Similarly, the direction of migrating birds can be a clue. During the spring, many species head northward, while in the fall they move south. If you see a flock heading in a particular direction, that's a natural arrow pointing toward seasonal migration routes that often align with major geographic features. All these natural cues, water, wind, and animal signs, work best when you weave them together. Imagine you're standing on a ridge, the sun low behind you, a gentle breeze from the east, and you spot a line of fresh deer tracks heading down a slope that leads to a faint, winding watercourse. By aligning the wind direction with the flow of the water and the animal path, you create a triangulated picture of orientation that is far more robust than any single indicator could provide. This layered approach mirrors the mental maps of ancient hunter-gatherers, who never placed blind faith in one sign but built a composite understanding from multiple observations. Now, let's transition from the natural signs to the low-tech tools that you can craft with just a few items from your pack or from the environment itself. These methods turn abstract observations into concrete, repeatable steps that anyone can follow, even under pressure. The first tool is the shadow stick, a technique we touched upon earlier but will explore in depth. Take a straight, sturdy branch, drive it firmly into the ground, and mark the tip of its shadow at regular intervals. By connecting the series of marks, you create a line that runs east-west, giving you a reliable reference for north-south. Even if clouds obscure the sun for a portion of the day, the early and late shadows still provide enough data points to construct a fairly accurate line. Another simple device is the sun watch made from a flat stone or a piece of bark. By carving a shallow groove and placing a small pebble at the center, you can track the sun's movement across the sky. When the pebble aligns with the grove's edge, you know you are at a specific hour angle, which can be translated into direction if you understand the solar arc for your latitude and season. This method may sound complex, but with a bit of practice you can estimate your orientation within a few degrees, which is more than sufficient for most wilderness navigation. If you find yourself in a forested environment where the sun is filtered through the canopy, you can use the tre-liane technique. Observe the angle at which the branches of a mature tree lean. In many regions, trees develop a lean toward the direction of prevailing winds over many years. This lean can be subtle, but when you compare several trees in the same stand, a consistent pattern emerges. Aligning yourself perpendicular to the dominant lean direction gives you an approximate east-west axis. Pair this with moss clues on the north-facing side of trunks, and you have a solid framework to orient yourself without any modern instruments. A more tactile method involves the stone circle campis. Gather a ring of stones in a roughly circular shape and place a single stone at its center. When the wind blows, the central stone will shift slightly, especially if the stones are loosely balanced. By noting the direction of the movement, you can infer the wind's direction at that moment. This simple experiment can be repeated several times to confirm consistency, turning a fleeting breeze into a steady reference point. Now that we have a toolbox of natural signs and low-tech devices, it's time to see how they come together in a real-world scenario. Imagine you are standing at the edge of a meadow after a night of heavy rain, your GPS battery is dead, and the sky is overcast. Your first step is to locate a sturdy stick and plant it upright, marking the shadow every 15 minutes to establish an east-west line. While you wait for the next shadow mark, you turn your attention to the nearby creek that has swollen from the rain. Following the downstream flow, you notice a gentle bend that points toward a higher ridge. As you move along the water's edge, you feel a steady breeze from the west, confirmed by the swaying of the reeds. The wind's direction aligns with the orientation you derived from the shadow stick, reinforcing your sense of east-west. Continuing onward, you spot a cluster of moss on the north side of a fallen log, confirming that you are indeed facing north when the moss covered side is on your left. Further ahead, you hear the faint call of a waterfall, indicating a pond nearby. You decide to head toward the sound, keeping the moss on your left, the wind at your back, and the creek on your right. As you approach the pond, you notice a trail of fresh deer tracks leading away from the water toward a low hill. Those tracks are your final clue. They point toward a natural saddle that offers a clear view of the surrounding terrain. From that high point, you can see a distant ridgeline that aligns with the direction you need to travel to reach the marked trailhead you originally intended to find. By integrating the sun's shadow, the water's flow, the wind's direction, moss growth, animal tracks, and the audible cues of birds, you have constructed a comprehensive mental map that guides you safely toward your destination without any reliance on electronic devices. This layered navigation strategy not only improves your chances of staying oriented but also deepens your connection with the environment, turning a potential crisis into an empowering learning experience. Now, let's put everything we've discussed into a live demonstration. I'm standing at a familiar trailhead in a forested valley, my pack light, and the sky is a muted gray. My goal is to hike 3 miles to a ridge overlook without using a compass or any digital aid. First, I locate a straight branch and drive it into the soil, marking the tip of its shadow every 15 minutes. After an hour, I have a line of marks that runs roughly east-west. I use this line to set my mental north-south axis. Next, I locate a small stream that runs parallel to the ridge. By feeling the current, I confirm that it flows toward the north, matching the orientation derived from my shadow stick. I then pause to assess the wind. The leaves rustle from the west, indicating the wind is blowing eastward. I decide to keep the wind at my back to conserve energy, so I turn to face east. As I move, I observe moss on the north side of the trees, keeping it on my left to maintain the correct heading. After a short distance, I hear the distant call of a hawk, a sign that I am approaching higher ground where raptors often circle. I follow the sound, staying aware of the stream's direction and the wind's consistency. Midway through the trek, I encounter a fallen log with a clear line of moss on its north side. I use this as a checkpoint, confirming that my earlier shadow stick line remains accurate. I also spot fresh rabbit tracks crossing the path, heading toward a shallow depression where a seasonal pond has formed. I decide to follow the tracks, knowing that water sources often lie near the ridge I aim to reach. The tracks lead me to a narrow opening in the trees that opens onto a gentle slope. As I ascend, the wind picks up from the west, and the sun, now low, casts long shadows that reaffirm my east-west line. Finally, after a steady climb, I break through the tree line onto the ridge. From this high point, I have a panoramic view of the valley below, the winding stream, and the distant mountains that mark the horizon. I can see the trailhead I started from, confirming that my navigation was successful. This demonstration shows that with careful observation, simple tools, and a layered approach, you can safely traverse unfamiliar terrain without the crutch of modern technology. If you've followed along this far, I'd love to hear which technique resonated most with you. Did the shadow stick method feel intuitive, or did you find the wind and moss clues more reliable? Drop a comment below and share your thoughts. Your experience might help someone else on their next adventure. Also, if this walkthrough sparked an idea for a future video, perhaps a deep dive into night navigation using the stars alone, let me know, and EAJ make it happen. Before we wrap up, remember that mastering these skills takes practice. I encourage you to try each method in a familiar, safe area first, perhaps in your backyard or a local park, before relying on them in a remote wilderness setting. Build a habit of observing the sky, the water, the wind, and the living signs around you every time you step outside. Over time, these observations become second nature, and you'll develop the confidence to navigate with just your senses and a few simple tools. If you found this guide useful, consider giving this video a thumbs up. Your feedback helps the channel continue to bring practical, hands-on content that you can apply in real life. And if you want to stay updated on more wilderness skills, techniques for building shelter, feed starting without matches, and other ancient crafts, feel free to subscribe. I'll keep sharing videos that blend science, history, and practical know-how to help you become more self-reliant in the great outdoors. Thank you for joining me on this journey through the timeless art of orientation without a compass. May your future hikes be guided by the sun, the wind, the water, and the subtle signs of the natural world. Keep exploring, stay curious, and remember, the wilderness is a teacher, and every step you take is a lesson in resilience and discovery. Safe travels, and EAJ see you on the next adventure. Now that you have the toolbox of ancient ways to find direction, let's weave them together into a habit that sticks even when the forest is dense and the sky is blank. Picture yourself standing at the edge of a clearing early in the morning, the air still cool, the dew glistening on the grass. Your pocket is empty of gadgets, but you have a sturdy stick, a small notebook, and the knowledge you just gathered. First, plant the stick in the soft earth and watch the sunrise creep over the horizon. Mark the tip of the first shadow, then move a quarter of an hour later and mark again. Connect those points, and you already have a line pointing roughly east-west. That line becomes your baseline for the day. As the sun climbs higher, the shadow shortens, and at the moment when the shadow is exactly half the length of the stick, you know you are close to solar noon. In the northern hemisphere, solar noon aligns with true south, so you can turn your body to face the sun and feel confident that you are looking toward the direction that will guide you deeper into the woods. In the southern hemisphere, the same principle points you toward true north, so a simple turn of the head swaps the orientation. When the day fades and the stars appear, the same stick can serve another purpose. Lay it flat on a smooth stone and use it as a straight edge to align with the North Star if you are in the northern latitudes. The North Star sits almost directly above the pole, so following its faint glow gives you a steady line to follow even when the forest canopy opens only in patches. If you are farther south, look for the Southern Cross, a bright handful of stars that form a distinct kite shape. Extend an imaginary line from the long axis of the cross toward the horizon, and you have a reliable pointer to the southern direction. Even if clouds obscure the sky, you can still rely on the patterns you have already etched into your mind from the daylight observations. The sun's path moves predictably across the seasons, and the angle of its rise and set shifts in a way you can anticipate after a few weeks of practice. By noting where the sun appears on the horizon each morning, you begin to build a mental map of the landscape's orientation that will serve you when the heavens are hidden. But the sky is only one part of the puzzle. The ground beneath your feet offers clues that seasoned hunters and gatherers have read for millennia. Notice the way moss clings to the north-facing side of trees in the northern hemisphere, where it stays damp and cool, while the south-facing side basks in sunlight and dries faster. These subtle differences can be a quick indicator when you are moving through a dense forest and need to adjust your bearing. Likewise, the shape of the branches can tell you which way the wind has been blowing. In the northern hemisphere, branches on the southern side often grow longer and lean toward the prevailing breezes that come from the south or southwest. Follow those leanings, and you can infer the general direction of the wind, which itself can guide you toward lower ground, water sources, or open vistas. Speaking of water, streams are nature's highways. In many regions, water flows downhill toward larger rivers that eventually lead to valleys and, often, to human settlements. By tracing the flow of a creek upstream, you can gradually climb out of a valley and gain a higher perspective on the surrounding terrain. Look for the direction of the water's surface ripples. They indicate the current's movement and can help you decide whether you are moving with or against the flow. In the early morning, when mist rises from the water, you can also gauge the temperature gradient. Cooler air settles near the water's edge, while warmer air rises higher. These temperature differences can help you locate the water's edge in foggy conditions when visual cues are limited. Animal behavior is another silent guide. Birds, for instance, tend to follow the same migratory routes year after year, often aligning with geographical features such as ridgelines or coastlines. If you notice a flock of birds heading in a consistent direction at dusk, they may be heading toward a roosting site that offers shelter and perhaps a water source nearby. Likewise, insects like dragonflies often hover over the edges of ponds and slow-moving streams. Following their flat paths can lead you to fresh water. Small mammals leave distinct tracks that can reveal not only the direction they traveled but also the type of terrain they prefer, whether they stick to open ground, avoid steep slopes, or favor dense underbrush. By learning to read these signs, you add another layer of intuition to your navigation toolkit. All these natural indicators, sun, stars, shadows, moss, wind, water, animal signs, work best when you combine them, cross-checking each cue against the others. If the sun tells you are heading east, but the moss on the trees suggests you are moving toward a north-facing slope, you may need to adjust your path to reconcile the two pieces of information. The more you practice this kind of triangulation, the more confident you become in making split-second decisions when the environment throws you a curveball. Now, let's talk about the mental side of navigation. When you are out in the wilderness, it is easy for the mind to drift into anxiety, especially if you feel disoriented. The key is to stay present, to focus on one observation at a time, and to treat each piece of data as a puzzle piece rather than a looming threat. Take a deep breath, feel the rhythm of your heartbeat, and remind yourself that you have the tools to find your way. In moments of uncertainty, pause, locate a stable reference point, like a distinctive rock formation or a tall tree, and re-establish your orientation using the methods you have practiced. These pauses can be as short as a few breaths, but it gives your brain a chance to process the information you have gathered and to reset any frantic thoughts. Practice, as always, is the bridge between theory and mastery. Start by setting small challenges for yourself in familiar places. Mark a trail in your local park, then try to navigate it without looking at a map or a GPS. Use only the sun's shadow in the morning, then switch to the stars at night. Record your observations in a journal, note the angle of the shadow at different times, sketch the position of the stars, describe the moss growth on nearby trees, and write down any animal tracks you encounter. Over weeks, you will notice patterns emerging, and you will begin to trust your senses as much as any electronic device. If you feel ready for a bigger test, plan a weekend excursion to a nearby forest or hill range where you can spend a full day relying exclusively on natural navigation. Pack light, bring a water bottle, a small first aid kit, and perhaps a lightweight notebook. Before you set out,